SITREP World Briefing for May 21, 2026. Lithuanian authorities issued a drone alert in Vilnius on Tuesday and told people in the capital to move to safe locations after a suspected drone was detected near the Belarus border. Residents were shown sheltering in an underground parking area as the warning took effect. The incident shows how quickly airspace concerns on Lithuania's eastern flank can trigger security measures in the capital. The alert was significant because Lithuania sits on NATO's eastern edge between the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad and Belarus. Any suspected unmanned aircraft activity near that frontier carries political weight, and the order to shelter in Vilnius showed that Lithuanian authorities were treating the episode as a matter of immediate public safety. In recent years, the Baltic states have invested heavily in preparedness, warning systems, and border surveillance, reflecting a broader view in Vilnius that low-cost aerial threats, including drones, can test response systems, civilian resilience, and allied deterrence. Federal prosecutors in Washington announced criminal charges against former Cuban leader Raul Castro over the 1996 destruction of 2 civilian aircraft flown by a Miami-based exile group. The case centers on the shoot-down of the planes, and the charges reported against Castro include murder-related counts, conspiracy to kill U.S. nationals, and destruction of aircraft. The indictment targets a figure who, at 94, remains one of the defining architects of Cuba's post-revolutionary state, having succeeded Fidel Castro before formally leaving the presidency in 2018. By bringing charges now, the Trump administration is tying current policy toward Havana to a long-running grievance in the Cuban exile community in Florida. Havana rejected the move, with Cuba's current president denouncing the charges as a political maneuver. Because Castro is in Cuba and extradition is not in prospect, the case is as much a statement of U.S. policy as a criminal proceeding. Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir released footage showing detained Gaza flotilla activists at Ashdod port. The images, circulated after Israeli forces intercepted the flotilla, showed dozens of activists being held at the port. The minister's decision to publicize the scene turned a maritime enforcement operation into a diplomatic controversy centered on the treatment of detainees in Israeli custody. The reaction spread quickly beyond Israel. France, Italy, Australia, New Zealand, and European officials condemned the video. The flotilla, identified as the Global Sumud Flotilla, had sailed from Turkey in an attempt to challenge Israel's blockade of Gaza, making Ashdod the site of detention and a flashpoint in the international politics surrounding access to the enclave. The episode highlighted Ben-Gvir's role inside Israel's hard-right governing coalition. As national security minister, he has pushed policies on policing, prisons, and the treatment of Palestinians. For foreign governments whose citizens often join such flotillas, the controversy raises questions about consular access, detainee treatment, and the wider diplomatic cost for Israel as scrutiny of restrictions on Gaza intensifies. SpaceX filed for an initial public offering on Wall Street in New York on May 21st, opening the way for one of the most closely watched stock market debuts in recent years. The company, led by Elon Musk, has grown from a private rocket launch business into a broader space and communications group through its launch services and satellite internet operations. The filing also highlighted how central SpaceX has become to both commercial finance and the U.S. space sector. A public listing would give ordinary investors access to a company that has remained privately held while winning launch business, expanding satellite connectivity, and increasing its strategic importance to U.S. aerospace activity. The World Health Organization declared the Ebola outbreak in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo a public health emergency of international concern, as infections and deaths continued to climb in a region already strained by insecurity and weak health infrastructure. The latest updates put the outbreak at about 600 cases and 139 suspected deaths, while officials warned that the virus involves a rare Ebola species and that a vaccine could still be many months away, complicating efforts to contain transmission in affected communities and across nearby borders. Authorities and outside partners moved to adjust their response as the outbreak spread, with the Democratic Republic of Congo canceling a national World Cup training camp and the United States pledging support for up to 50 Ebola treatment clinics. Aid groups and health experts linked the deteriorating response capacity to cuts in international health funding, stating that the emergency in eastern Congo has exposed how quickly surveillance, treatment, and vaccination plans can weaken when donor support falls in a conflict-affected area that has faced repeated Ebola crises before. Stopping Ebola in eastern Congo is especially difficult because response teams must work in places where armed violence, displacement, and public mistrust can interrupt contact tracing and isolate patients from care. Ebola spreads through direct contact with bodily fluids, and rapid isolation, safe burials, and ring vaccination are normally central to containment. But health officials now face the added problem that any effective vaccine for this strain may not be available for as long as 9 months, raising the stakes of the WHO emergency designation for Congo and neighboring states. Sources are available at sitrepbrief.com.